Welcome, everyone. Let's begin. We're going to start this forum now. I'm Shannon Silverman, a co-president of the League of Women Voters of Arlington Heights, Mount Prospect, Buffalo Grove area that also includes Wheeling, Prospect Heights, and Elk Grove Village. So what is the League and why do we do candidate forums? If you're not familiar, the League, is this working okay? Good, okay. If you're not familiar, the League of Women Voters was born from women defying the odds to publicly educate and advocate what was then a groundbreaking idea, expanding women's rights for educational and professional opportunity in America. Women's right to vote was a part of it. So education, voting rights, and helping people vote informed is really the heart of our mission as your local league. We are in our 70th year supporting our area, and we're so proud of that. Yeah, 70 years. I looked it up, and that's our silver and gold anniversary birthday. Isn't that awesome? We get both. So anyway, this is our 70th year providing these sorts of engagements to our community to hear directly from candidates in an inclusive, nonpartisan space. So vote for who you want. We are here to make that easier for you. Before today, all 5 candidates on the ballot for Arlington Heights Memorial Library trustees received invitations by mail, phone, and even personal delivery. Candidate Jim Moncada is not participating today. These 4 candidates accepted and are able to be here today. The candidates seek your vote for 2 open spots as library trustees on the Arlington Heights Memorial Library Board. We hope you find this next hour helpful and make your plan, and please go vote. Voting locally gives you a lot of impact here at home, and voter turnout for local elections is often lower, so even one vote has even more of an impact here at home in local elections. Our partner today, Arlington Heights Memorial Library, is a gem in our community, working to help provide free public civic programs like this candidate forum here today. Let's all give a round to the library and its staff. They're fabulous, fabulous. Thank you. There are a few preliminaries to touch on before I turn it over to our moderator. The forum is being recorded. In a few days, everyone can click through to it on our league website, which is at LWV-AH.org. I'll say that again, LWV-AH.org. And there will be a link there to our YouTube channel where the recording of this forum will be posted in its entirety. Please share the link, but give us 1 to 2 days to get it up and posted. Please give us that grace. Thank you. All candidates signed the same ground rules to participate today and will be asked the same questions submitted by you, the audience, with the same amount of time to answer. Please submit your written questions. Good, thoughtful questions from you make a good candidate forum. You can raise your hand and an usher will bring you an index card to write it on, and you simply hand it back to the usher. No questions will be asked from the floor. Written questions will be reviewed by league volunteers to check for redundancy, legibility, and clarity, and to make sure it's a question appropriate to be asked for the Office of Library Trustees. Sometimes there are multiple questions involving the same issue or idea. Our league volunteers may consolidate them into one question to leave time for audience questions on other issues or ideas. Everyone has some views, let's face it. Everyone has some views that are not the same as our own or the next person we're sitting next to. Out of respect for the candidates and your fellow audience who also took their time to be here, we ask that you hold your applause until the very end of the forum, and we applaud all candidates for their volunteerism and willingness to serve. Please do not interrupt or demonstrate support or opposition of a candidate. Would you join me in honoring our nation by saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I will now gratefully hand the forum over to our moderator, Sue Swearingen, who is a trained moderator and member in the Glenview-Glencoe League of Women Voters. Sue, we're grateful to have you here.
Thank you, Shannon. How's this for sound? Good? A little closer? How's this? Great. All right. As Shannon said, my name is Sue Swearingen. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Glenview-Glencoe, and I reside in Chicago, so I can't vote for any of the candidates participating here on the podium. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates of any party for any office. We provide forums as a major mission of the League of Women Voters so that citizens can become better informed about the issues facing our communities and to become better acquainted with the candidates running for office. The format today is a forum, not a debate. That means that candidates will not be responding to each other's replies to the questions that come in from the audience. Candidates are expected and asked to accurately represent the facts, and their responses reflect their own views and opinions. We hope the candidates will speak to their goals and their plans, and that they refrain from speaking about another candidate or what another candidate has or has not done. We will begin in alphabetical order with a 90-second or 1.5-minute opening statement. We will then alternate the order of candidate responses going through the sequence of the panel up here. After the question portion, candidates will also be given 1 minute to answer each of the questions that have been submitted. And then when the when we wrap up, finish with time, candidates will give an opportunity to give a 1-minute closing statement. Members of the league in the front row here, can you raise your hand so our candidates can see you? Are acting as timers. Can you please show the candidates the 30-second notice and the stop sign? So you'll be given 30 seconds, an alert to, you'll know that you'll have 30 seconds left to finish your response. And then when the stop sign is raised, we ask that you finish your sentence. After that, finish your sentence, and then we'll move on to the next candidate. Okay. And to our audience, I ask that those here in attendance, please turn off or silence your cell phones or any other electronic devices you're carrying. I also ask that you be respectful and hold your applause or in any other way demonstrations of support until we finish the forum. And finally, to our candidates, I would like to say on behalf of our audience and everyone here, how appreciative we are that you are not only willing to serve in office, but that you've agreed to be here today. So let's get started. Candidate McClaney, you have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
Can everyone hear me? Awesome. So first off, I wanted to say thank you to the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to speak today. Of course, I'm not a politician, so bear with me for a moment, but I wanted to first introduce myself. I've been an Arlington Heights resident for approximately 6 years now. My wife and I have 3 children aging from 25 to 8. So all stages of life in terms of challenges as parents. Day to day, a lot of the work I do is in cybersecurity. So I understand quite a bit about the challenges that the library faces in terms of access, information, making sure people have the right access to things, then ultimately making the right decisions for the community and taxpayers. My wife works in education. So a lot of our conversations we have as a family revolve around issues that are important in terms of learning, education, and school. What I'd like to say is also, if you choose to vote for me, the three things that are important to me are making sure our library stays accessible for everyone. Secondly, fiscal responsibility, making sure that the things that we invest in, we continue to invest in, as well as we think about the future in terms of innovation. So, thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Watts, your opening statement?
Hello. Hi, I'm Barb Watts. I have been a community member for 16 years. I live here with my husband and my 3 kids, 2 of which goes to South Middle School and 1 which goes to Prospect. I've been so lucky to be part of the library as a patron for so many years, whether it was watching the kids learn to read board books by the fish, or whether it's going to the makerspace to make Christmas presents. It's one of the reasons I'm most passionate about the library is the library has been there for me to meet me at each stage of my kids' development and my own development as a person. I want to make sure that we keep the library accessible and inclusive for folks. I want to make sure that through financial responsibility, we take care of our library and there's resources available for the future. I want to make sure that we keep our library innovative and full of growth so that we continue to be a nationally award-winning library. I'm so proud of the library because it is the heart of our community. And my goal is to keep it the heart of the community by having community access and learning about what the community's needs are and adapting to those as those change over time. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Weiner, your opening statement?
How about now? My name's Dave Weiner. My wife Helen and I are 40-year residents of Arlington Heights. I have a bachelor's of business administration and finance from UW-Oshkosh. My primary work experience prior to retirement was running a contract manufacturing company. We packaged consumer food products and personal care products. At that time, I was responsible for over 500,000 square feet of manufacturing facility in multiple locations. After that experience, I got into real estate for a short time, and I managed a condominium and homeowners association portfolio. I'm currently on my condominium board of directors. I'm a 10-year member of the Rotary Club of Arlington Heights, and I served on the board for 9 years, and I'm the immediate past president. Helen and I are friends of the library members, and we are also regular donors to the Library Foundation. Just a note on my bookmarks out there, I misspoke. The Library Foundation really only has donors, doesn't have members. So that was a mistake there, but we are donors. I'm also a regular volunteer doing cleanup work in the morning for the guests at the PADS homeless shelters. Thank you.
Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. My name is Daniel Yousif. I thank the League of Women Voters for having us here today. I've lived in Arlington Heights for about 20 years, non-consecutively. I decided to move back here after having a quite good upbringing, and I wanted to subject my daughter and my family to the same positive community that I was blessed to have. The library was not very accessible for me growing up when I needed it the most. As a teenager, it was inaccessible due to just transportation, and part of my reason for running for library is to make that more accessible to the youth, especially the ones who can't drive, and there's no public transportation. Some other reasons for my prospects as a library board member is I want to continue to see it thriving the way it is. I want to see it continue to be fiscally responsible. And I want to make people aware that the library has something for everyone. It really does. As a police officer, I also will have a focus on safety and security for all patrons, especially our youth that are visiting the library by themselves. And some things about me, I have an English literature degree from Loyola University of Chicago, so I'm quite well read. I love to read. And I have a technological background as well as law enforcement skills. And I thank you and look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. Our first question, Candidate Watts, what are your thoughts on the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in library services?
Because the library is meant to serve all members of the community, I don't think that you can have a library that is serving and meeting those needs without addressing diversity and equity and inclusion. You can't serve the whole community if you exclude a certain group. As far as diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, I think those initiatives are meant to bring more voices into the conversation. And I don't think that we can hurt our community by bringing more voices into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Weiner, the same question?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that the library can do is bring diverse programs to this community. I think if you look around Arlington Heights, at least in this room, and many times when you look at Arlington Heights, there's not a lot of diversity. And I think it's important that the library bring those different views and different exposures to the community. And I hope the library can continue to be a place that offers those types of things. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. I think the library's been doing a great job with DEI. They put a spotlight on authors that I think deserve a spotlight, and exposing us to authors and writers that we might not necessarily be subjected to just from our circles. The library is a good avenue for us to get out of our comfort zone. I think that a focus on bringing people here as a third place is a good start for anything, whether it's diversity or not. If people come here and see other people like them and see their people being represented, whether it's as employees or as patrons, people will be comfortable coming here. And I think that's what we need to focus on, just getting people in the door of all races, all genders, all backgrounds.
Thank you. Candidate McClaney?
So I think diversity in and of itself is important. It's important within the library system so much, and that ultimately when we think of diverse environments outside of your school environment, I think of the library. I think of my upbringing in Chicago, and I think about the fact that at the end of the day, the ability for us to be diverse is important. It's important for learning, it's important for growing, and ultimately, I think we need to focus on that as a library.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with candidate Weiner. Residents are taxed on both the Arlington Heights Library and Harper Maker spaces. Are you aware of efforts to ensure that there are no duplications? And if not, would you support the two groups working together regularly?
I'm not aware of any programs to eliminate any duplication, but I do know that the library staff does a great job of developing programs for each space. And I think that should continue, that we have those two places with a varied amount of programming for the entire community.
Thank you. Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. I don't think there's much redundancy between the library and the maker space. I mean, they have cooking classes, they have crafts programs. I mean, you can go there and do crocheting with other members of the community while watching a movie. And the library is more of a resource for gathering materials, maybe getting together with some people. The kids area is great. So I think if there was some redundancy and duplications, I think the library would do a good, would do good on that to remove that duplication redundancy. And I haven't seen any problems with that. There are some things that I see at both places, like the 3D printers. There is one here and there's one in the makerspace, but other than that, I don't really see much.
Thank you. Candidate McClaney?
I agree. I don't really see much duplication in what I've researched in terms of the library. I think what we need to focus on is making sure that we keep things for their intended audience and keep them separate if we need to. Any efforts to consolidate, I don't think are meaningful at this point.
Thank you. Candidate Watts?
The question seems to be whether resources are being used in the best way possible, whether things are being duplicated, which is wasteful, right? The more that we can partner within our community and even within our own organization to make sure that resources are accessible to everyone, but there isn't duplication, makes sense to me. That's why it's important for the library board to be a strong community member and have strong connections with other boards, including our parks districts, our school boards, and the actual trustees of the village itself. By having those and fomenting those relationships with other members in the community, we can make sure that we're using our resources the best we can and that that's not causing any financial waste.
Thank you. We'll move on to, excuse me, question number 3, and we'll begin with candidate Yousif. Most of a library board trustee's job is to ensure the library is meeting the needs of the community. A small part is looking out for the staff. How will you make yourself available to library staff?
Thank you.
One moment, please. Let's ask again that you please silence your phones and any other devices. Thank you.
Would you mind repeating the question? Thank you.
Most of a library board trustee's job is to ensure the library is meeting the needs of the community. A small part is looking out for the staff. How will you make yourself available to staff?
I think the most commonsensical approach is just talking to people, talking to staff, talking to constituents, talking to residents. What do you want from your library? What do you need from your library? If we don't have something here that you need or want, you should be able to request it and it should be considered as long as it's reasonable. So for me, as a prospective library board member, I want to not just hear from my fellow library board members and ask them what they think, but I want to hear what their constituents think. What are people saying on the ground? I personally have spoken to a lot of constituents and they tell me what they don't like about the library, what they do like about the library. So I'm going to take a lot of that into mind when I'm sitting in that boardroom.
Thank you. Candidate McClaney?
So I think what's important is folks feel heard. So in terms of my approach is to not only have conversations with those individuals, but also share my contact information. I think we as trustees should be available and be the voice of whoever needs that voice. So that's my approach.
Thank you. Candidate Watts?
I spent 10 years working in HR, and I know happy employees make a happy workspace, and it makes good clients. And that does apply to the library too, right? If we have employees who are fulfilled and satisfied and happy with their role within the library, they will pass that on to the patrons and in the way that they serve. I'm looking forward to being accessible, offering up my email and phone for anyone who needs to talk so that they have access to someone who's willing to listen. I can say that sitting through the board meetings the last few months, the board, as it stands today, has been incredibly generous with their time and their consideration to the library staff, and I'm hoping to see that continue.
Thank you. Candidate Weiner?
Yes, I, like Barbara, have attended the last few months of library board meetings. And I find it very interesting that the board devotes at least a portion of each meeting, it seems like, and hopefully this continues, to a staff presentation. And I think that's really important to allow those staff members the opportunity to show the board what's going on in the library. I mean, we just had a presentation with the family place certification, which is a real honor for the library, one of only two, I believe, in the state. So I would keep those avenues open at board meetings for the staff.
Thank you. Moving on to our fourth question, and we'll begin with candidate McClaney. How, if at all, do you see artificial intelligence being used to improve library services?
So I think the use of artificial intelligence will, for lack of a better word, basically take over. So what I mean by that is a lot of the services that in a traditional sense we count on people doing, we can use technology for. So looking at our library in terms of circulation, in terms of the numbers that we track, I think largely if we use artificial intelligence around that, we will draw people both to the library to check materials out, but also use that in terms of advancing their careers, and for children, helping them in terms of education.
Thank you. Candidate Watts?
After I left my role in HR, I moved over to technology. The company that I work for right now is working on something called mindful AI, and I think it's fascinating. It's not removing the human from the equation. It's using the technology to help humans do humaning things better. It is finding ways to pull in resources so that you can have information at your fingertips. It's not telling you how to think about the information or even what to look at. It's pulling the things that you ask in a more efficient manner. I would love to see AI resources be used in this way, not to supplant the human element, but to supplement it.
Thank you. Let's continue with candidate Weiner. Do you need to hear the question again?
No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I think we've all heard a lot of scary predictions about AI. And I believe when we're talking about the library's use of AI, I think as Barbara indicated, I think it's a tool that the library users should have at their availability. And I think it will help them in searching, in finding out how to do things within the library. So I would not be afraid of AI and its implications here in the library.
Thank you. Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. I don't want to come off as somebody who's anti-technological. I mean, I have a background in technology, but part of what makes a library great is the holistic approach. AI has its uses. Can it be beneficial in a library? Yes, but I don't want it seeing it being overused to a point where it replaces staff, replaces faces that we see. I want to see it used as a service to the library and its patrons. But what I'm afraid of is it taking away from the human aspect of the library. I mean, could you imagine a police officer such as myself being replaced by AI, having my decisions being made by AI? I mean, I don't want that. So I think it has its uses, and I'd be interested in learning more about how the library could implement them. But until then, I like the holistic approach the library currently has.
Thank you. Question number 5. And we will begin with candidate Watts. under the current circumstances, what do you anticipate for federal funding for public libraries? And how would you propose that it be addressed?
We are so very fortunate in Arlington Heights that over 90%, over 95% of our funding actually doesn't come from the federal government. Where you're going to see federal funds being used is in grants. And I do anticipate that that grant money will dry up within this administration. It's been one of their stated goals. So to that end, I do think we need fiscal responsibility. We have to make sure we're spending money in the smart ways and that we're not having waste. That being said, Arlington Heights is very well positioned in the fact that we are not receiving a tremendous amount of federal funds. Our funds are mostly through property taxes and through gifts from organizations like the Arlington Heights Library Foundation and the Friends of the Library.
Thank you. Candidate Weiner?
Yes, I agree with what Barbara said. The library is funded primarily through taxpayers and property taxes. So I don't think the threat from the federal government taking away funding is that significant. But I still do believe that the library is, we're talking about I think about 150,000 square foot facility here, aging. And I think being fiscally responsible to the taxpayers in how we manage that facility is an important role that I see myself playing if I'm elected to the board.
Thank you. Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. I think that the library has done a great job in managing its resources. I think it's been very fiscally responsible to the point where it's only levied upon the residents of Arlington Heights, I think twice, and I think the most recent one's only 2%. So I think if we just maintain the status quo, we won't really have to rely on federal funding. I mean, I would hate for it to go. I would hate to lose that if it's available, and I would do everything I can to gain that federal funding from the federal government. I don't want to lose, if it's a nonpartisan role, I don't want to lose any access that we can bring to the library and on behalf of Arlington Heights residents. So we wouldn't even have to do a levy. So I don't want to squander what we have either. So if we don't have the money to upkeep what we have, then all the money that we spend is gone. So it's important to make sure we continue to invest in what we have.
Thank you. Candidate McClaney?
So kind of to piggyback on what Barb and Dave said, a lot of the funding is not from the federal government, right? So my thought is, how do we maintain fiscal responsibility while maybe building reserve? I think we need to think about long-range planning the next couple of years. How do we make sure that that piece of our budget that we don't necessarily receive, how do we get that? Is that more private donation? Is that more being fiscal responsible with our capital campaigns and so forth? I think that's ultimately what the conversation should be.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with candidate Weiner. Do you believe Arlington Heights Library has any issues that need to be resolved now or in the near future? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, I have to say that I've been a patron of the library my entire 40 years here. I've only attended a few board meetings because I had conflicts on that on the board meeting nights through Rotary, but I have not seen any in the time that I've observed the board. I have not seen any major issues come to light. I know that there is going to be an upcoming drive, fundraising drive to replace the bookmobile. And I know that that's going to be a fairly substantial cost. And I think that is something that hopefully the community can get behind because, again, outside of the taxpayer funding of the current operation of the library, this is going to be above and beyond anything that was planned. So hopefully that will be a successful campaign.
Thank you. Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. I think there's always room for improvement. And for me, like I said earlier, growing up, I didn't really have much access to the library, just logistically. And I do have some ideas to implement to get our teenagers and youth here. And it's going to cost money, but we have to invest in our future. And our future is our kids. I don't want our kids being on the street and, seeing what I see as a police officer. I want them here safe and engaging with the community in a positive manner. And one of those ideas that I have is a youth shuttle. And if kids can't get here by their own means, I want to be able to go get them and bring them here. I also want to see more marketing for the things we have here. A lot of our constituents, they say they don't need the library. They don't use anything here. So we need to market what we have better, bring attention to what we have, the maker space, the maker place, and the teen hub. So yeah, there is always room for improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McClaney?
So I think the library's done a pretty good job thus far in terms of investment. The one or two things I would say that we could maybe invest more in is maybe a mobile app. I've noticed that we don't have any type of mobile app that we could check books out, check materials out with. And then also infrastructure. I know we have old servers. I know we have old pieces of technology that need to be upgraded. So I think keeping us current will drive that ultimately.
Thank you. Candidate Watts?
There's a lot of things going on. You've heard a lot of talk about financial responsibility and the things that need to be done from an infrastructure perspective, and that's 100% correct. We have things that need to be replaced, like the bookmobile. We have HVAC expenses coming up, and that's all very relevant. The other thing is, though, that the library and the world that we're in right now is ever changing. The library has done such a good job at staying at the forefront of that by learning from other partner libraries and staying on the forefront of things. We are so lucky to have a maker space, and that level of innovation and growth and what it brings to the community is a challenge that we should be excited to accept. It's not a negative challenge, but it's a positive one. How do we continue to stay relevant and accessible and innovative and award-winning so that our community members can benefit from all the library has to give?
Thank you. Our next question will begin with candidate Yousif. What do you think about having satellite libraries around the community to increase accessibility?
I think that would be a wrong move. We have a great library here. We have the Maker Place just a couple blocks away on the other side of Arlington Heights Road. I think the library's mission and keeping everything centralized here is a good choice, and it should continue that way. We don't want redundancy, and we don't want duplication. We don't want to be fiscally irresponsible with our resources. So I think the way to make this more accessible is to work with the Village of Arlington Heights, the trustees, and try to figure out how to solve public transportation, how to solve accessibility for our youth to get here, like the shuttle program. I mean, there's no point. We can have all the best things in the world, but if nobody can get here, what's the point? And the people that need this the most are our youth, and they have no way of getting here outside of their parents. So that's what I would focus on. I would focus on getting our youth here and keeping everything centralized between here and the Maker Place.
Thank you. Candidate McClaney?
So I believe that from a satellite library perspective, I think we're good with what we currently do, which is we have the location here. I think the challenge is if we go down the path of having a satellite location, ultimately you're pulling resources that could be used here at this library. So my preference is we keep things the way that they are and that we work to partner with our other libraries to make sure that we provide what everyone needs.
Thank you. Candidate Watts.
The question is one about accessibility and making sure that we're serving all of the members of our community, both on the far north and far south ends. To that extent, I agree with the other candidates in that we do not need to open a satellite library, but we do need to address the differences in geographic area and how we are meeting the community where they're at. That is involved with partnering with our other community members, whether it's park district or whether it's school districts, to make sure that we're serving all aspects of the community. Thank you.
Candidate Watts, you had another 30 seconds, or you had another 30 seconds? Did you? Okay, thank you. And Candidate Weiner.
Yes, I too would not recommend satellite locations. The library has partnered with the Park District to provide two 24-hour pickup locations that are accessible to the community on both the north and the south side. And I think, again, this, you look at your tax bill and you see what portion of your tax the library is responsible for. It's relatively small, I understand. But I still think it's important that the board recognize the fact that, we've got an aging community and they'd like to probably age in place. And the thing that will limit that will be property taxes. So whatever we can do to try to minimize that impact, I think it's important for the library to do that.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with Candidate McClaney. This is a sustainability question. If economically feasible, would you support adding solar panels to the library roof?
I would. So I would support adding solar panels to the library. I think for a couple reasons. The first is it shows that we are progressive in terms of what other institutions are doing. And I can speak from firsthand experience as my role as a member of the First United Methodist Church of Arlington Heights. We put solar panels on top of that roof, and ultimately that's led to some increased savings in terms of our energy usage.
Thank you. Candidate Watts?
I would support solar panels or really anything that brings clean energy and affordability. It brings down cost associated with it. So if the cost makes sense, and this is a great area where we can apply for grants and we can apply to get financial resources to help us out with some of these projects, I would support us using that money towards having sustainable energy.
Candidate Weiner?
Yes, my experience on our condominium board, we, not too long ago, applied for a ComEd grant, and I believe it was over $10,000 in just our small condominium for replacement of all the lighting to LED lighting, and it represented a significant savings. I think the library, with the remodeling that's been done and planned in the future, they will be using LED lighting to achieve some cost savings. And if solar panels make economic sense, then I would certainly be in favor of it. But of course, we got to look at the payback on that proposal.
Thank you. Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. I think it's great that we consider green initiatives, but we'd have to look at the return on investment. If we put solar panels on our roof, how long is it going to take to pay for it? 25 years, 30 years? I mean, Illinois doesn't get the most sunshine, but we do get enough, I think. So we'd have to look at the numbers and see if it's something that we need and something that it's going to be beneficial. I think one positive aspect of having solar panels would be if we have a blackout in Arlington Heights, people can come here kind of as a refuge and we can keep the lights on for them. I think that would be why I would want solar panels, so that we can have battery backups and keep the lights on and keep kids here safe. So I'm a little conflicted on that, but I'd be interested in learning more about the scale of the project and how beneficial it could be.
Thank you. Our next question will begin with candidate Watts. How do you plan to protect the freedom to read without censorship?
The library has a method that you can go in to request materials be added to to our stock of what you can read. And I think that's a great thing because it allows different people from different walks of life with different viewpoints to request those materials and be represented within the library. I am against censorship and I'm against bans. I think it is to each person to make their own decisions about what they read. I shouldn't be making decisions on what you read, the same that you shouldn't be making decisions on what I read. It is a personal freedom, and I respect that for each individual in the community. Even when sometimes I really, really disagree with what they're reading or what they're thinking, it is not my job as a library trustee to monitor that or to censor it and prevent you from having access to those materials.
Thank you. Candidate Weiner?
Yes, I think the library has a process in adding books to their collection, and I think that process makes sense. The act of checking out a book or signing up for a program at the library is definitely a voluntary action. And I don't think that activity should be restricted in any manner. I guess I might put one caveat on that is that if there are some age restrictions placed on some items, so that we keep them out of the hands of younger patrons. But other than that, I wouldn't believe that there should be any censorship.
Thank you. Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. As someone who's taken an oath to protect the Constitution, I have no intention of censoring anyone. Now, are there some materials I find questionable? Yes. I don't think we should be having books that teach people how to be arsonists, and I don't think that we should have certain books in the kids' world that they shouldn't be reading. Now, when they become adults, then that's that's up to them. But, I also leave it up to the parents. What do they want their kids to read? What do they not want them to read? But, there are some books that are questionable and dive into racism. And if you're doing comparative research, I don't see why we would stop anybody from doing that. But I'm not going to be banning any books. I don't believe in that. I believe in the Constitution. I believe in freedom of speech. And I believe that means access to literature and resources.
Thank you. Candidate McClaney?
I also am against any type of censorship in terms of our materials. I think there needs to be common sense in terms of age appropriateness for certain things within the library. And a lot of this conversation to me is very similar to video games when I was a kid, in terms of what video games should people have access to. And largely, there's been measures put in place to prevent certain individuals from having access to those things. So that's my answer. I think it's common sense, and ultimately, everyone should have fun.
Thank you. We have time for one more question and then our closing statements. So we will begin with candidate Weiner. Why is it that you want to serve on the board? And what do you think are your unique qualifications relative to your opponents?
I have been, as I mentioned in my opening, a resident for 40 years of Arlington Heights. I've been a user of the library. And I just see that now that I'm retired, I've got the time and still have the energy to devote my time to help the library. And that's really my primary driving force. I think I bring my work experience running a business that is not unlike the size of the library. If you look at the library, it's really about a $17 or $18 million business. And I know a lot of people don't realize that. So I think I bring that ability and knowledge of running a business of that size to the board.
Thank you. Candidate Yousif?
Thank you. I think there's a multitude of reasons why I want to serve on this library. I think the board has been doing a pretty good job so far, and I want to continue seeing it thrive. I want to continue seeing that progress made. And I want to avail myself. I want to avail myself with someone, I think maybe the only one in history to have law enforcement experience on the library board. I want to bring that perspective to the library, and I want to give that to the residents of Arlington Heights too. If I see downfalls in the Arlington Heights Library, I'm going to bring it up to the board. But I have a multitude of skills. I'm very well read. I have an English literature background, and I want to serve as a role model, not just to my residents, but to the youth. Some unique qualities that I have is technology and literature. So we'll see. We'll see if I'm good enough for y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McClaney?
So why do I want to be on the board? I think for me, the most important thing is I want to serve this community that I've grown to love, and you guys have welcomed me and my family in the short time that we've been here. The other reason is ultimately, I believe the library is a pillar of the community, especially for children. I saw this when I was growing up in Chicago. I spent quite a bit of time at the library. So in terms of my unique qualifications, I work in cybersecurity. I understand risk, controls, accounting. So all the items that come up as a board member, I've seen, I've talked to folks about, and I have a perspective on. So I think those things make me uniquely qualified.
Thank you. And Candidate Watts?
Our library journey in our family was different in that I have a child with a learning disability, and watching him struggle and not be able to read was really difficult. But it really showed me the importance of literacy and the library and lifelong learning. And so through his struggles, I gained more and more of an appreciation for everything that we get in this community and everything the library does for us. It's part of the reason, one of the main reasons I want to run is because I want to see that accessibility for our community and that kind of programming. My job today is as a director of implementations. At its heart, it's project management. That means getting multiple stakeholders to agree to something. It means understanding the needs of everyone who's part of the project. It means meeting budget. It means meeting timelines. Given all of the things that the library has coming, whether it's a new bookmobile or replacing the lighting, it's all projects and it's all people.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of our questions. And we will conclude this forum with our candidates' closing statements. We're going to go in reverse order from the opening statements, and that means we'll start with Candidate Yousif.
Thank you. I appreciate the League of Women Voters holding this forum for us. And to my fellow residents and community members, I implore you to use your library. Doesn't matter who of us you vote for. I think you got some really good candidacy up here. But I implore you to use this library, go to the maker's place, take a cooking class, and borrow some things from the library of things. There's a lot of niche items that you might not want to buy, but you might need. So, and also market it. Tell people how great our library is. Don't leave it to chance. Tell people we have the best library in Illinois. Don't let Evanston beat us. They are a family place library, but first isn't always best. So, and we have movies, we have books, you have everything, video games. So bring your kids here and tell them to bring their friends here. And thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Weiner?
Yes, I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank the League and the Arlington Heights Library for hosting this forum. I also want to thank the other candidates here for taking the time and effort to put their hat in the ring. It's civic duty. I believe all the candidates here can agree that we have one of the best libraries in the area, if not the state. I think that all of the candidates can probably agree that if elected, they would join the board and work to continue the board's work to make this library as good as it is and keep it one of the best. I think what differentiates me is that I have run a business. Early on in running businesses, I learned, I would say, conservative fiscal responsibility. And I would take that conservative fiscal responsibility to my position on the board if I was elected. Again, I want to thank the audience for taking the time out today, and I would appreciate your support in the upcoming election.
Thank you. Candidate Watts.
Thank you to the league and the library, and actually everyone who joined us today to learn more about your candidates. Thank you for the candidates for attending. I am very passionate about the library. The best part about canvassing and walking around and knocking doors has been to talk to the residents. And when I say I'm running for library, their face lights up and they tell me how much they love the library. And I share that love with you guys. I love the library. I'm passionate about it. I want to see the library stay the same amazing resource it is today for folks. As part of that, I want to make sure that we stay accessible and inclusive. I want to make sure that we are a library of innovation and growth, and we can only do that through financial responsibility and community engagement, which are all things that I plan to work towards as library trustee. Hopefully I've earned your vote for April 1st.
Thank you. And Candidate McClaney.
So thank you to the league as well as my fellow candidates. It's been a pleasure getting to know you guys. And I know whomever you guys vote for, which hopefully will be me, the library will be in great hands. I'd like to thank you for your thoughtful questions. I've learned quite a bit in terms of what's important to the folks here. And I hope that I've done enough to convince you to vote for me in terms of making sure that we're fiscally responsible, we keep the accessibility where it should be as a library, and that we grow together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our forum. I want to thank our audience for your very thoughtful questions. It's unfortunate we weren't able to get to all of them, but as the candidates have referenced, what we were able to ask is a good representation of what's on the minds as the most important issues of the patrons of this amazing facility. I also want to remind you that candidate forums, the education part, is not the end of your duty to vote. Please use this information to decide who has earned your vote, and then decide how you're going to cast your ballot. We are very fortunate in Illinois to be a voter-friendly state. You have many options to vote: by mail, early voting, or on election day. And with that in mind, you have virtually no excuses not to make sure that you participate in the April 1st election. So with that, I also want to thank our candidates for your time, for being with us today, and for sharing your goals and ideas.
Can we get a brief round of applause for our moderator, Sue? So you will see on the back, we have these bright hot pink signs you can't miss. They're bright hot pink for a reason, so you can't miss them. If you're looking for further information on any candidate running in our locales, go to illinoisvoterguide.org. It is a all stop in one place voter guide, and you can click on the QR codes over there. I will tell you that it has not yet completely loaded and launched for this election season, so check back and check back frequently. It's a really good resource, nonpartisan information provided by the candidates themselves. Thank you very much. Have a great week.